Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Caston with Caston Racing in Speedbull USA. I'm going to do some work on the SOAR TD1R. Going to continue to work on the front end. I'm going to show you, how we take apart the front CVD and get that all cleaned up. And again, the CVDs are the same on all four corners of the car, so all of them will be the same process. All right, so let's get set up. Okay, we're going to go ahead and talk about cleaning our CVDs. This is just one corner of the car, but all four of them are the same. So what we do to one, we do to the other three. CVDs are a high wear area, or they're amazingly durable for the amount of force and stresses that are applied against the joint. But it's something you definitely do not want to put off. Okay, it's something you want to do on a regular basis. So we're going to go ahead and get after it. So I'm going to go ahead and use my wheel wrench so I can see a little bit better what I'm doing. These on the SOAR car, they're a 2.5 millimeter grub screw that holds the hex pin in. So all you gotta do is just loosen that a little bit. That's not a grub screw that has to be tightened. It doesn't hold the whole car together. It just needs to hold this pin from sliding out. If you over tighten that grub screw, you may end up cracking that pin. So don't do that. Okay, here's our CVD. It's out of the steering block. I'm going to go ahead and I'll pop the bearings out of there and check those, make sure they feel good, lubricate them if they're needing to be lubricated. Alright, so I'm going to push the pin out and separate our axle from the joint and push the barrel out. So now we have our three components. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and wipe this out real good. Make sure when you are cleaning your pin to inspect it, make sure it's not getting all grooved up or worn down at the edges of the pin. The pin will wear if you don't maintain your CVDs enough. If it gets dirty and real dry, the pins will wear where they go through the axle. The very outer ends of them will get to the point where they'll literally just wear off, and your CVD will no longer turn the wheel. So if they do start to get worn, it's time to replace the pin, because once they start going, they will go all the way. All right, so we now have cleaned up our CVD essentials. Don't want to leave any residue. One last check to make sure we're clean. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and apply some grease to the barrel. This is Udder Butter, by the way, from Cow RC. If I get the barrel all lubed up, then I know that as it slides through the outside of the CVD, that it will be lubricated. Okay, and then I also put a little bit in the two side grooves of the CVD. Good thing is you can never put too much grease on something, because that's why we have rags. But I put grease in the grooves, and then I use a little bit of the excess grease and rub it around the outside of the joint where it may make contact with the inside of the axle when I assemble it. So I don't want it to be just sloppy, soaked with grease. I do want enough grease in there to make sure everything stays lubricated. Okay, now we're going to line up our axle, goes over the joint. Right now I've got enough grease in the slot that I'm not quite sure where the hole is, so I'm just going to locate the hole. There's the hole. Okay, so if I get the hole pointing straight up and down, then I can pretty much line up the axle so that I can easily find the hole once I go to put the pin in for the final time. And there she goes. Okay, so now I've got axle grease. I'm gonna just kind of wipe some of that around and out. Again, the more grease you have, the better chance of catching dirt. But it has to be greased, so you're kind of in one of those situations where you have to make sure it's greased, but don't over apply it. So if you have to wipe a little bit off, wipe a little bit off. Make sure there's grease in there, just not too much. All right, so there is our CVD. Let me check these bearings real quick, then we'll put this back together. Okay, so we've got our bearings cleaned up, lubricated, everything's good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and slide our CVD assembly through the bearings. Same way it went together, or came apart. This is how we put it together, just in opposite order. Put the hex on the axle, line up the hole, put the hex retaining pin through the axle. Just make sure it's not sticking out one side of the hex or the other. Funny thing, when you have the hex sticking out, or the pin sticking out one side of the hex, the wheel doesn't want to go on. Go figure. Again, this grub screw in here, it's a 2.5 millimeter grub screw. All you're doing is securing the pin so that the pin doesn't slide out of the hex. Okay, you're not holding the axle into the steering hub. You're not, I mean, there doesn't have to be a lot of pressure on it, just enough to make sure it's not going to come free. You don't want the pin to come out of the hex. So now we have very smooth action there with our CVD. Bearings are clean, bearings are free. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put this back on the car. Okay, so there we have it. Have the front end back together. Everything's cleaned, everything's lubricated, everything's polished, everything's free. Everything is the way it ought to be. All right, it's time for Mountain Dew or something. Got some work done on the car, so I'm gonna get out of the cold garage and go back inside here, but appreciate you sticking with us and figuring out how to clean up our CVDs. And dirt is our enemy, remember that. So we have to grease these things, which means they're going to attract dust and dirt, which means we have to clean them, and then we have to grease them again. So it's a never-ending process, so make sure you don't ignore the CVDs. They're gonna you know, they will wear out on you if you don't pay attention to them. So make sure you put the work in and keep your car maintained. Whether you're racing or just out having fun with it, you got to put in the maintenance to enjoy the fun times too. So We appreciate you taking the time to watch our video. And if you have any questions about the video or any other parts of the car that you want to see us do some videos about, just put them down there in the comment section, and we'll answer any questions you have, and we'll prepare to do some more videos. Again, we'd greatly appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the Castor Racing YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so that when we do come out with some more videos, you'll be the first to see them. And go check out Speed Bull USA for your SOAR cars, and get you a couple nitro vehicles, a buggy and a truggy, and get you a couple electric vehicles. So we appreciate you taking the time, and we'll see you at a race sometime soon. So until then, soar on.